Hi everyone, this is Sue from the Public Library and we are excited to offer you a new virtual experience. Jan and I and Molly times would go to school and we would do book talks for grades at school at both the elementary and the middle school. And we're going to miss doing that this year because of the quarantine, but we decided that we could do these great book talks and put them online so more people could enjoy it. So we're excited to tell you about some of the great books we've been reading this summer so far and last spring, and hopefully you are interested in some of these titles and you can request them from the library using InfoSoup. So I'll start. We're each going to do 3 books. And the first book I'm going to talk to you about today is called The Runaways. It comes to us from an author from Sweden, and oftentimes these translated books are short and sweet, but very rich in personal character development. In this story, we meet Grandpa, and Grandpa is in the hospital. He has a broken leg, and he's not happy. In fact, he's the biggest grump in the hospital. He's not very friendly to the nurses. He's not really friendly to anyone. And Dad, he's not that interested in being around Grandpa because he's so grumpy, so he picks every opportunity to avoid going to visit. But Godfrey Jr., the grandson, wants Grandpa not to be alone in the hospital, and he does the exact opposite. He sneaks out of school early to go visit Grandpa at the hospital. And one day when he's visiting Grandpa tells him that his one wish is that if he could just go back to his house on the island just for one more night, he would be a happier person. So Godfrey Jr. does what he can to make that happen. And this then turns into an adventure story of Grandpa and Junior's weekend away and how they got there, how they got out of the hospital without anybody knowing. This would be a good family read aloud. It also is a great opportunity to talk about when telling an untruth might be okay and when it's not. This is called The Runaways, and it's by Ulf Stark.
Hi, Jan here, in case you couldn't figure it out. The next book I'd like to talk to you about is called The Amelia Six. And anybody who likes a great mystery is going to love this book. I'd give it to a 4th grader or a read aloud. It's a great book. 6 girls are chosen throughout the country who are interested in any science career. They show ability of inventiveness and creativity and thinking outside the lines. And 6 girls are chosen, and what they win is the opportunity to spend an overnight night in Amelia Earhart's childhood home. And they come from all over the country, so they're all different. They get to this house, which really does exist, and they are treated to a fantastic meal. They are said, go ahead, explore the rooms, make yourself comfortable, find a place where you're going to sleep for the night. There's this fantastic gingerbread house that's made by the cook there that's an exact replica of the house. They're given presents. It's close to Christmas, so the one big room is set up with a big Christmas tree, and it's very warm and cozy. But the highlight of the evening is that they get to go on a scavenger hunt. And so they're split up into teams, and they're going through the house trying to solve these little riddles. Everything's going great until a pair of Amelia's favorite goggles disappear. And they're important goggles because a museum and a university are kind of vying to have these goggles. So they're very valuable goggles. The girls start bickering and blaming one another and saying that, it was probably her. But then things get dangerous. There's a blizzard outside. The lights go out. Someone's tea is, shall we say, altered with a sleeping potion. And these girls have to band together to figure out who took the goggles, what happened, and they have to work together. There's lots of real facts about Amelia Earhart and her times, and one of the most interesting ones that I found was this group of women called the 99s, and they really exist, and what they are they're pilots and daredevils that try to reach out and support girls in the aeronautic field and any scientific field. It's called Amelia Six.
Hey, it's Molly. First up book I wanted to talk to you guys about is called Tornado Brain by Kat Patrick. And it's about a girl named Frankie who loves tornadoes, and she also kind of relates to them because she feels like her brain is kind of a tornado at all times. She's got so much going on in there. Sometimes it's hard for her to keep things straight. And it kind of affects her ability to make friends. She only really has one good friend, and then we find out pretty quick in the book that she and that friend recently had a falling out and aren't even really friends anymore. And that friend is now best friends with her twin sister. So that really kind of affects her friendship with her sister. Well, very early in the book, we find out that this former friend has gone missing. And nobody's really sure what happened. She just suddenly one night was gone. And it really bugs Frankie. She can't figure out how she feels about it and is just very confused by the whole thing. And eventually realizes she wants to figure out what happened to her friend. So is Frankie able to figure it out? Is she going to make up with her sister? Is she going to make up with this friend? You know, can she gather all her thoughts to get through the situation she and her sister are in?
Well, I'll tell you, I could not do a book talk without including nonfiction. I am a nonfiction reader, and if the nonfiction reads like a story, that makes it 10 times better. And there's always one author I go to, and his name is Steve Sheinkin. If Steve Sheinkin has a book, you can know that it's going to be on my reading list. And his latest book is called Born to Fly, and it tells the real stories of 20 pioneer female pilots. I thought it was interesting that Jan talked about Amelia Earhart, because Amelia Earhart is in this book too. But she's only one of the 20 characters who are challenged to make a 9-day trip from California all the way to Ohio in a race. Now, this was before GPS. It was before weather radar. It was even before there were airports in practically every county in America. 1929, that was 92 years ago. And I will say that this book kept me at the edge of my seat. It starts out with telling the story of how these 20 women got interested in aviation. But then it draws them all together in California, and right before the race, they're having this big party, and someone gets a telegraph. Here's the telegraph. That means someone is going to sabotage the race. Whose airplane is it going to be? How is it going to happen? Oh my gosh, I had to keep reading. It was a page turner from there on. And in this story, there's all sorts of real life adventure and real life survival techniques. It has downed airplanes in it. There's maps that are blown out of the cockpit. There's right out of the hands of the pilots. There's bad storms. There's even cows on the runway, not letting them land. Lots of great adventure. And 15 of the 20 women make it to the finish line. If you want to know what happened to the other 5, you've got to read Born to Fly by Steve Sheinkin.
I'd like to talk about Song for a Whale. It's written by Lynn Kelly, and it is a marvelous story about a girl with grit and determination, and she follows her passions and does good. Okay, so 12-year-old Iris stumbles upon a story about a whale, and the scientific community calls him Blue 55. And this whale communicates or sings his song at a frequency that no other whales can hear. Iris can empathize with that because Iris is the only deaf student in her school. And she's frustrated because people assume that they know what she wants. They think they can read her signs, and she's so frustrated. But she does find peace and solace in the fact that she can take any old radio and fix it. She's great at anything electronic and mechanical. She's great. But she tries to convince her parents to allow her to go to this other school that is for the deaf students. But she finds she's just as isolated there because they've been together for a while, they have newer signs, and she's been coached in a more traditional, older style signs. Well, she decides that with her knowledge of knowing how frequency and sound waves work, that she's going to create a song for Blue 55. And she's going to have a system around it so that she can put it in the water and send this song to Blue. She tells this rescue center that she's done this, and they say, oh, great. And she says, can I come out and try it? And they say, great, come. Until they discover she's only 12 years old and her parents don't want her to go. Well, Iris does not give up. She goes to a grandma, and her grandma is also deaf. And she's also grieving at the recent loss of her husband. So she goes with Iris. Iris convinces her to fly from Texas, where they live, to California, to catch the cruise ship, to go to Alaska, and then try to work their way to get to this rescue center. Well, of course, nothing goes right. Obstacles are put in there are the way, but Iris is determined. And an interesting thing about this is that they did this whole thing, and Grandma kept in contact with the parents, but she never really told them the whole truth of what they were doing. And also the author of this book is a sign interpreter, so she has a very unique way of telling the story.
Next book I'm going to talk to you about is called Harbor Me by Jacqueline Woodson. It's about a group of 5th and 6th graders who all have unique challenges to school, whether they be learning disabilities or family circumstance that their education hasn't been great up to this point. So the school puts them into a smaller classroom so they can get more attention and be able to succeed academically. Well, they also all have very unique life situations. They're from different minorities. One of the characters has a dad in jail. They don't all have 2 parents in the home. So they all have their own kind of stuff they're dealing with. Well, one Friday afternoon, the teacher walks them to an empty classroom and says, all right, I'm going to leave. You guys have an hour. Do what you need to, whatever, and walks away. And the kids are kind of left to their own devices. Well, this happens week after week, and the kids end up starting to talk to each other and open up, and they kind of learn how to support one another and how to be good friends, and all of it's so much easier without the prying ears of the adults around. So it's really interesting to watch these characters develop once they kind of get outside that normal classroom setting and they really start to love their Friday afternoons together. And it's great to see how it kind of comes around to helping each of the characters in the end.
I couldn't let a book talk go by without talking about a funny book. This book is called The Next Great Polly Fink. And in this story, we meet Caitlin, who is about to start a 7th grade in a new town and a new school. And she's really ticked off that her mother had to move them from her popular school and all her friends in New York to a very small town in Vermont. And in this new school in Vermont, there are only 11 students in her class. And it is quite the unusual school. Very, very small. They even have goats. I mean, they do weird things at this school. It's even held in a mansion. It's not really in a school like we would picture a school. On the very first day of school, Caitlin is surprised when she enters the classroom, and everybody's disappointed that she's not this person named Polly Fink. Well, who the heck is Polly Fink? Polly Fink was a student from last year who was epic. He was funny. He was an instigator. He was a troublemaker. He kept everything interesting. Teachers even would say he was a thing to remember. He was legendary. And so she was a little put out that, okay, I'm pretty good, but whoever this Polly Fink is. Well, the kids tell story after story after story, and they're hilarious stories about Polly Fink. And so finally they decide if Polly Fink is not going to come to their school, they're going to find who the next great Polly Fink is. And because they watch reality TV, they know exactly how this is going to work. And they choose Caitlin to set up some challenges that they all have to do. And every week, just like on reality TV, one of them gets kicked off the island, so to speak, is eliminated from the running. And they're going to find which one of them is going to be the next great Polly Fink. I don't want you to read this book unless you want to giggle uncontrollably and be filled with joy, because it is so funny and unconventional. And the goats play a very, very, very important role. The Next Great Polly Fink by Allie Benjamin.
The next book is Begone, the Raggedy Witches by Celine Kiernan. Mupp's family has always been protected by Auntie Boo's magic. This is a very fantasy book, and it's also very scary, so I wouldn't give it to anybody too young that still has nightmares. But her family has always been protected by Auntie Boo's magic. Well, on the night of Auntie Boo's death, there's this horrendous storm. And on the way home, Mupp looks up and sees these witches following them home. And Mupp's Auntie Boo has always told her, whenever you see witches, you tell me. Don't tell Ma'am, her mother. Don't tell your dad. Tell me. Auntie Boo's not there anymore. What's she gonna do? She soon finds out, because when they get home, these witches come in and they try to convince Mupp's mom to come back with them to Witch's Burrow. She'll have none of it. She said, no, I don't live there anymore. I'm not going back. My family's here. Well, everything's going well until Mupp's dad is kidnapped. So Mupp, Ma'am, Mupp's little brother, and their dog, and Auntie Boo's ghost go back through the forest that's behind their house, and they go into this burrow, Witch's Burrow, which is, there are rhyming crows, there are shapeshifters, there are evil characters all over the place, and the whole place is run or ruled by an evil queen. She's really bad. And guess what? She's Mupp's grandma. Not a good grandma. Mupp's grandma wanted to have them come back to the burrow because she was convinced that Ma'am, Mupp's mother, was going to come back eventually and take over. She didn't want that. The rebel forces in this kingdom wanted Ma'am to come back to help fight against the queen. All Mupp and Ma'am and her little brother, all they want to do is find Dad and bring him home. What's going to happen? If anybody likes or has read the Chronicles of Narnia, the Tolkien books, those books with the owls, the Warrior series, if you like any of those, this is right up your alley.
All right, for my last book, I chose a nonfiction as well, called I Spy by Guillaume Duperreau. I hope I'm saying that right. Mm-hmm. This is a really cool book. If you've ever wondered how animals see the world, it goes into a lot of different animals in detail, and each page talks about the different animals and shows you a little picture of how they see the world. And as you compare throughout the book, you're going to see that the colors change, the blurriness of each picture changes, and then it talks about the scientific reasons behind why their vision is this way, and also the adaptations that are the reason for them seeing this way. You know, a bat doesn't need to be seeing perfect color because they're not out during the day. It even goes into, like in the bat situation, talks about other senses they'll use kind of in place of sight when their sight isn't necessarily something they can rely upon. It's a really neat book, goes into all sorts of animals, reptiles, of mammals, insects. So you get a great idea of the different ways they see the world and why they see it that way. So that's I Spy. For any of these books you like today, or if you want any book recommendations, give us a call. You can also use InfoSoup, and we are still doing curbside pickup if you'd like. And we are allowing people in the library now. If you come to the library, you need to be over 10 or with a parent, one parent and one child, wearing a mask, and you're allowed in for about a half hour. So come visit us.
And do book packs.
Yes, and you can request book packs. Look for the link on our website or on Facebook. We want to help you get those great books in your hands. So give us a call, visit us, go to the website. We're happy to help. Have a great day. Thanks for watching.